everyone. Tom Schin here again with This Meeting Should Have Been a Podcast. Excited to be back for another exciting episode. With me today is my good friend, Angela Pearson, or as many people know her, Dr. P. We're going to dive into a little bit of where that naming convention came from. Probably easier or simpler than I'm making out of it, but there had to have been some tagline with it. But Angela we had a funny conversation a couple years ago where everyone else had to call her Dr. P, but I was allowed to call her Angela. So anywho, Angela is the president and founder of OD Synergistics. And we've been friends and colleagues for 6, 8, 9, 10 years, something like that. We met in our local HR circles and then some. And I've been part of one of her clients. And so I've seen firsthand her impact and her passion for what she does. So welcome to the show, Dr. P. Tell us a little bit about you and what you're working on these days.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. Thank you for having me here. So my background is in organizational psychology and HR, and I've spent more than 20 years helping organizations solve complex people and leadership challenges, and there are plenty out there. So today, much of my work basically focuses on just helping people integrate artificial intelligence responsibly while strengthening organizational culture and also psychological safety, which is one of my favorite things to talk about. So I believe that AI is transforming how we work, but leadership, trust, and human judgment will always be the true competitive advantage. So right now I'm writing, speaking, consulting, and developing practical frameworks that'll help organizations basically navigate change without losing sight of the people that they're serving.
Right. And that's the big challenge that a lot of HR professionals are facing right now. The demands of the business, AI, quote unquote, getting rid of jobs or getting rid of people, right? This sort of, the tech can do it better than the person, sort of. But we're at this crux where how do we keep this seesaw of too much AI, too little AI? Because for a while it was everybody needs to use it. And I think everybody's using it now. So, when you talk about that AI piece, what are you seeing the most common theme is with the conversations you're having right now?
Well, a lot of things, but the thing that I want to address today is that people are telling their employees to use AI, but they don't have any formal implementation of it or governance and training that goes along with, well, how do I use it? And then how do I use it responsibly? And then also, if something goes wrong, who's responsible, right? And that's another reason why we do need that AI governance, because if we don't have that, so people understand what ethical and responsible AI use is, people might get in trouble. You probably see some of these news reports on the different major companies that have made some boo-boos with AI, and, it's serious business.
Yeah, we had that discussion in one of our earlier episodes. Another guest shared some of those stories with a major consulting firm, and they're paying the piper now. And there's this thought that it's Google or Claude or whatnot. Like, it's just computer telling me facts, and they don't. I know a lot of us who talk about it, podcasts, speaking events, and so forth, will tell folks, look, be careful. This isn't your corporate attorney who's bound and has to tell you all these right things. It's a conglomerate of internet stuff, good and bad. But, we run into those pieces. And so you're seeing a lot more demand for folks looking for, how do I set up good guardrails, good boundaries, some policies around how we teach people how to use it. Even so, I'll equate that. We hire a manager from outside the company. We presume they know how to manage her because we ask them one question in an interview. Yeah, I manage people and I like to give them their rope and They kind of do this and that and the other. Then you find out that they're a yeller and a screamer and a dictator type of leader. You're like, oh, that's not what we meant. I think of it the same way here, right?
Exactly. I can even give you a more simpler and probably funnier example. So I was just telling my oldest son, who's 30 years old, well, he's going to turn 30 this year, about how I realized when he was growing up and I would tell him, go sweep the floor, I actually didn't show him how to do it. I assumed that when I swept the floor, he watched me sweep it, that he understood what sweeping the floor meant. And when he would sweep it, he'd not get the corners. And so it'd be dust and dirt in the corners. And I'm like, you have to go back and do it again. And I go back and it'd still be dust and dirt. And I finally realized you didn't give him the proper instructions on how you wanted him to do what you asked him to do. And we still laugh about that to this day.
Yeah, we ran into the same thing. Like with three boys, they're all grown ups now, but you'd battle that clarity. Inevitably, one would get it right once. So you'd just instantly think, all three of you get it. But no, one would take it super literal. One would say, well, you didn't tell me that.
You gotta
Parenting,
love it.
parenting. But it happens at work too.
It
We run into
does.
those, like, make assumptions when I'm hiring folks. You know how to do X and Y and Z based on your answers. I don't ask for examples. Most folks don't. I say that in air quotes. Uh, we try to find those spots where we need to, as leaders of organizations and communities, be more specific. Let me make sure you understand what I mean when I say X and Y and Z.
You make a really good point because as you were speaking about that, I thought about how we even prompt AI, and I'm not going to go into a rabbit hole because I could talk about this all day. But learning how to prompt, putting something into AI that's in your head and thinking that you're going to get the result of what you had in your head, it's interesting. It really is. You learn how to be more specific and to be detailed in order to get what it is out of your head into AI so you can get that output. And that's how this is. It's
Yeah.
great.
I've come to learn a friend of mine, Chris, he talks to his AI conversationally. And so I've started to do that in terms of, I want to do something like this. Ask me some probing questions to help me refine what it is I'm trying to get out. And so it's turned, and you shared some prompts with me recently that just turned things upside down for me in a good way. And it's just, I consider it like Mario Brothers. You level up, right?
Yes.
You move on to the next world where, oh, you can do so much more. And I love the results that are coming from it all, but it takes some of that trial and error of knowing what a prompt is. Write me a job description. Great, not super complicated. Write me a job description that suits introverts who are in accounting fields that don't like to talk to people.
Yes.
Okay, it's going to give me quite a different result, some similarities, but like the more specific, it's fascinating to me. And I know when we started the show last year, the AI was just sort of the side piece that came into every conversation, and now it's just AI,
Take it
AI,
over.
AI. So, what are you most excited about that you're working on right now? Do you have anything energetic or inspiring that's landed on your plate that you just can't wait to get out of the box, so to speak?
Well, I do have something. It didn't just land on my plate. It's been 6 years coming.
Mhm.
So hopefully that doesn't say anything bad about me, but it's taken 6 years for me to finish this book. I'm ready to publish it. It's called The
Nice.
Table Between Us. And it started out as a DEI field guide because that was the last industry that I was in and working with very heavily. And then things changed the beginning of 2025. We had the DEI executive orders, and it could change how we did business. So I said, well, let me change this book up. Let me just refresh it. So I decided to make it a leadership fable. I don't know if you've heard of Patrick Lencioni. I'm pretty sure you have. Like he
Yes.
has the business fable. So it's something like that, but it's about repairing culture through courageous conversations. The title itself, it represents every place where important conversations happen, like conference room tables, kitchen tables, boardrooms, or even like we're doing now, virtual meetings. And every organization has a table between its people. You may not realize it, but it does. And the story explores what happens when trust breaks down and when leaders have to decide whether they're going to avoid the difficult conversations, which many of us do, and I'm just including myself because I've been there and done that, or if we're going to lean into them. And it's about psychological safety, accountability, beginning forgiveness, and rebuilding trust. And more than anything, I hope that readers, if they get the book, that they finish it believing that culture doesn't change because someone writes a new policy. It changes because people choose to have conversations that they've been avoiding.
It's huge. I know for some of the work that I do, the conflict conversation component definitely comes into the picture quite a bit. And you're absolutely right. We all avoid those conversations at home, at work. Uh, Sometimes it's at the store when you see somebody being a knucklehead. Like, treat the person with a little dignity, right? They're making $14 an hour, whatever it is, and you're treating them like they're something less than you. Yeah, I get irritated when I see people in the parking lot and they just not caring about what they're doing. They'll leave their carts right in the middle of where somebody needs to park. I'm like, come on.
That's
And
another thing that gets on my nerves too. I thought I was alone.
right at some point you needed that cart and it was in the way of the spot and you were mad. And so now you're giving it back to the next person. Like, anywho, that's another
Right.
rabbit hole. So when does the book come out? You said you're finished writing. Have you done all the editorial pieces as far as copywriting and all that?
Well, that's the part that I'm working on now. I want to say hopefully it will be out before the end of the year. It should have been out last month, and things happen, life happens, and I'm self-publishing, so I'm all of those different things in one that would normally assist in publishing the book. But I'm glad I'm taking my time because it's really good. I've read it a couple of times now and I'm like, wow, this really relates to what people are going through every day that normally they just don't want to talk about. And it's in story telling format. So that helps keep the reader interested too.
Yeah, I love that. I think for me, you know this. I don't want to say I fancy myself a storyteller, but I love stories as they connect to different messaging. I think that's a big part of what makes me who I am. But I think it's also a nice tie-in to people to understand your message and relate to what that chapter's about, what that segment is about. And then you're like, I had that happen to me too. Um, yeah, that I'm excited for you. That's, I spent 10 years in publishing. So, those bound book dates and published dates, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember we had to do this 6 weeks out. You had to have copyright for 2 weeks, but you're doing it yourself. So it's even more work, more like work.
Yes, on top of other projects. And you are a great storyteller. That's one of the things I love the most about you because you can tell a good story and you definitely make me laugh. I don't know about anybody else, but you can make my day brighter just by telling the story. So I appreciate you for that.
Aw, thank you. I can throw in some laughing moments here. We have some fancy tools here in the studio, but yeah, absolutely. We find moments to interject a little humor and joy into everyone's life. And I think,
Yeah,
there
we
are
need to.
touching stories where you tug at the heart, but then there's just, let's just be real with things. So that's how I've always looked at things in terms of I'm not trying to interrupt or be rude or distract people from getting a message, but it's like all I can picture is Heath Ledger as the Joker saying, "Why so serious?"
Right.
Going into my pop culture references. Um, I don't know if it's true for you, but I have found in presentations, I'll drop movie references from like the 80s and 90s, and I get a room full of blank stares. And I realize that I'm like 15, 20 years older
We're
than them. And
telling our age.
I know, I know. Once
I
in a
just have
while,
this. Sorry, go
once in a
ahead.
while, you find the savant who's like 25 and has seen all the same things you have because they had good parents. Uh,
Right, right. That's my kids. They can tell you everything from the 90s because that's all I like, they could tell you.
yeah. So you had written this piece a couple of weeks ago, and I was excited with just the title, "The Illusion of the Open Door: Why Psychological Safety Requires Executive Action."
Yes.
And when I read it, I remember having a large team, and then some coming into me way back when, and even the smaller teams over time, having that open door policy was sort of this unwritten rule or sort of Bible of you must have an open door policy if you want your people to like you, if you want your people to do anything for you. But when I started reading, I'm like, oh, she went a whole nother direction with this. Tell us about what inspired that piece. Certainly some research, but where
Yes.
you went with that, and just kind of give us a synopsis of why this is so critical for you in the work that you're doing. Because I know you mentioned your framework in there, which we'll want to talk about as well.
Yes. So, as I mentioned before, psychological safety is my passion because I have been that employee that has worked in an organization, several organizations, where I did not feel safe. But I also realized that individuals didn't understand how to create psychological safety because we throw these words around and we assume, like we talked about, the example of instructing people and having them do what we want them to do and they do something different. Um, we assume that people know what that is and how to create it, but that's not the case. So when we go back to the open door policy, I know many people that are working for an employer in their first probably 30 days, they will hear, hey, if you want to talk to senior leadership, We have an open door policy, or I have open office hours. I've even done that. And it's great. It's great to have. But I think what we fail to realize as leaders, opening the door is one element of it. Being safe enough or feeling safe enough to come through that door and then talk about whatever sensitive topic you want to talk about, that's a whole different story. So
Right, because there's the part of it where I want to grab technical information because I'm new. I know I need to come to you to learn this software or how do we process this because this is how I did it at the last place. But after you've learned some functionality and you're independent or independently operating in a business, going to that open door is a whole different ball of wax.
it is. It is. And the more structural power you have, the less likely people are going to feel comfortable walking through your door. And it's very interesting too, because a lot of times leaders don't realize, they're like, why people are not coming and talking to me. I told them I have an open door policy or open office hours, and they fail to realize that that within itself is the perfect opportunity to learn how to create psychological safety and create that environment where people can come in. Because if someone comes to talk to you about something, especially if it's something that someone, excuse me, that you don't know, you're not familiar with, you're going to want to get to know them, right? You're not going to want to just have them sit down and spill their guts to you. You want to know who they are. So when you hear about whatever they're experiencing, you're able to not only relate, but be able to help them in a way that helps them, in a specific way, not in a general way. So I think
It's
a
a
lot of
trust
leaders
building.
fail that.
It's a trust building moment, right?
It is.
Either I, as an employee, trust my manager. And a lot of times it only goes so far. I can remember having times where I told folks, look, if this job isn't for you, come tell me, I'll help you find something else. But I knew that rang on deaf ears because who's going to tell their boss that they're going to leave because they need to still feed themselves while they're there and they don't want
Not
to
too
get
many.
fired or the oh, we'll find any excuse to get rid of you sort of thing. And I thought the same thing. I'm like, I think there's probably only one person that I worked for, my friend Bev, that I would have ever said something like that to. But that was eons ago, and I would have never left her. So,
Right.
but yeah, the psychological safety is I love and appreciate the fact that since the pandemic, having discussions about it is more commonplace than it used to be. The sad part is it took us a long time to get here, and people are still rolling their eyes. They're like, psychological safety, what's that? And do we really need to pay attention? Or because you know as well as I do, there are some percentage of the population that take advantage of the term mental health. I need a mental health day. We all do, right? But there are people who take advantage. But that's true of sick days and anything else too.
That's interesting that you would say that, because I just had a conversation with someone who does not like the term. They fully understand what it means, but it's just, I guess, one of those things where they've had personal experiences where they're like, people did exactly what you just mentioned, and they're like, no, no, unacceptable. But people often think that it means everyone has to be nice and agree with each other. And that's not psychological safety. Like, you don't get to say what you want, when you want, how you want, to whom you want. There are consequences, good and bad. So,
Yeah.
I think that's a misconception as well.
Well, and I love how you put this in your framework. I'm gonna draw us into there that listening down piece where I am intentionally, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm intentionally as a leader going in and prompting people for trust, for relationship value, for information, and to better understand what their needs are, so I don't want to say root out who's going to leave me because that's not the intent behind it. But I see it as let me build some trust. Let me find some areas that I am not doing well and I'm not going to get you to come to me to. I've got to go to you. I've got to meet you where you're at.
Two-way street. Yep. So true. And I'm glad that you mentioned the framework, because it does appear sometimes to heavily be one way, and the person that needs to go talk to the leader has that heavy responsibility of, I got to go talk to them. Well, let's just use this as an example. It's the CEO, and I have to have this difficult conversation about something that they probably don't know about, or if they do know about it, they've done nothing about it. So now I'm bringing it up to them, and I might look like a troublemaker. I might lose my
Hmm.
job, so they're thinking about all of these things. So again, the CEO has a responsibility to pull them in and to say, hey, understand this. We all give disclaimers, right? Understand this. if you say something, and I would do this a lot in HR too, when people would come to talk to me, I would say, I have a disclaimer. I can hear anything that you tell me. However, if you talk about things that harm yourself or harm others, I have a due diligence to report that as an EEOC representative. So, like having some kind of disclaimer that people understand, you know, but opening that door, having that pull that seat out and say, hey, let's talk about this. I want to know why this is impacting you, how it's impacting you, and what I or my team, my leadership team, can do to support you and to move past this and resolve it.
Yeah. Again, it points to me. I printed your article out. I put big letters trust all over it. But there was a few points. I'm like, this is beautiful. All this stuff aligns with my thinking. So it's no curiosity point that we get along so well. But there's this piece of the red team that you put in the constructive dissent protocol in that piece. And folks that are listening or watching, we're going to put a link to this article in the show notes so you can pull it up. But I love this red team because I would call it a devil's advocate in my language.
Yes.
Like I would speak up in meetings. I'm like, what about this? What about that? And I was confident in my own knowledge and experience to be able to do that. Not everyone is, right?
This
As
is
you
true.
put, some people are afraid to speak up. But talk to me a little bit about that. Explain to folks what this red team piece, the constructive dissent protocol, because it's built into your program, into your architecture.
It is. It's one of those things where you have a neutral party just kind of like balance things out. Because when you're trying to build trust and establish psychological safety, and one side is heavier than the other, you kind of need that neutral party. It's like going to a therapist and having them tell them everything because you can't tell the person that you need to tell because in your eyes, they may not be able to judge you because they don't know you, right? So that's what that red team responsibility really is, to kind of say, hey, let's talk about this and let's be able to move things forward without these emotions. Let's stay objective and let's see how we can actually, like, how can we solve this? How can we make things better? How can we make each other better?
Right. I love it. I try to recommend it when I have like with coaching clients. I'll reference this in a few different scenarios, but the gist is you have a sour Sally in the group who's always "Wah, wah, wah." And so I suggested them, okay, well, we're going to create this role in your operations meetings. And this is going to be your devil's advocate. You're going to give them that role the first couple of times, but then you're going to move that mic around. This is your time to offer suggestions that go against the grain. You're really good at it. Play them compliments because they are good at pointing some things out. But when it's all negative, you're like, "Ugh." And so you move some of the roles. Find the optimist role, find the antagonist role. And really, your job is just to spot out things. Doesn't mean that's all you do. You're listening to everything else, but it forces us out of our comfort zones. It forces the manager to listen to the person from a different voice. Uh, and then you always know somebody's going to take the charge of the dissenting opinion, as you put it in here. It sort of forces you to think about what you're not thinking about because we all run in this alignment of these bias. We've talked about it because you did some bias training with one of the work orgs that I was with. That affinity bias. If I have too many echo chambers in the room, I'm never going to learn anything.
Right. Yes, folks.
Yeah, I had that conversation with somebody this morning. I had to explain the affinity bias piece. I'm like, oh, okay, we're going to go down another rabbit hole.
It's a good one, though, an educational one.
Yeah. So this framework, do you lean into it in terms of the work? Is this going to be part of the book? Are you going to touch on this at all? Or
So this won't be part of the book. This is a separate framework. I actually just created it about 5 months ago because of some conversations that I was having with people that were having these issues with psychological safety. Another thing I want to mention real quick is feedback, because this all ties into being able to have those courageous conversations to create psychological safety. And it's really, it's really hard for people to hear that the feedback or the way that they're giving feedback is not good or appropriate. And I think leaders, if they're listening to this, please take a moment and put your pride to the side, pride and ego, sit them over there in the corner, tell them don't come out until you call them, maybe don't even call them back. But you have to understand how to receive feedback. It's not always about just giving feedback, you know? And we don't teach people, we teach people how to give it, but we don't teach people how to receive it. And that's probably just as important as giving it.
Well, and there's the simple version where somebody pays you a compliment and someone will say, "Oh, no, you're just saying that." Just say thank you, right? That's the simplest version. But the same thing applies for that senior leader. Like, look, if somebody's going to offer you some criticism, you don't have to like it. But the fact that you're listening to it and not blowing up over it will speak volumes.
Yes.
And frankly, whether there's people in the room or not, there's ears listening everywhere, right?
How you
So
respond.
it only lets the leader practice patience and active listening, which makes them stronger and makes them strengthen that relationship. Because now that person who was afraid to speak up is a little bit more confident that they're not going to get lambasted. And guess what, people? That person's going to tell others, yeah, I didn't get in trouble. I just shared my opinions and I said this and they thanked me. I feel really weird. Am I going to get fired tomorrow? And then 3 months later, they're chugging along, right? They've strengthened that relationship. And it won't work everywhere, but that's kind of what we hope. Uh, it's a good place to sort of aim for when it comes to that transparency element.
Mhm.
Yeah, I really liked it. So yeah, back to it. I'm sharing enough love of that piece that you wrote. It struck me as such a strong chord, and I underlined almost all of it. I feel like. So,
You can make a playbook from it. I mean, it's pretty no nonsense. I mean, I'm pretty sure people, if they read this, if the people that have read it, they probably have identified with a whole lot that's in this article. I mean, because it happens so often everywhere, you know?
uh-huh, uh-huh. Well, and there's your idea for your second book or an accessory to the table between us. Right.
Another
Here's your
6
workbook
years.
on how to. Right. Well, it doesn't even need to be. You can follow the same outline, and now it becomes the workbook. Uh, that's a popular thing these days. I look different books that I read. Those like, oh, buy our accessory book. Da, da, da. I'm like, maybe, maybe not.
Just for the record, you're gonna have to do the forward.
I'd be so honored to. I, would, I will write all sorts of falsehoods. All right, so Angela, we never talked about this. The Dr. P staring me in the face. How did Dr. P become a thing? Where did it start? Obviously, you got your PhD. We're going off on some tangents here, but that Dr. P piece has been your staple. I know here in our local region, that's how people refer you to you as Dr. P. And when I say Angela Pearson, they're like, who?
That,
And,
yeah.
oh, sorry, Dr. P. I'm like, I get to call her Angela. You got to call her Dr. P.
Who's Angela? Who's Dr. P? Yeah. So it actually happened pretty organically, and it happened before I became Dr. Pearson. So one of my college colleagues I was in a program with actually started calling me Dr. P because we were getting ready to prepare to defend our dissertation. And anyone that knows about that process, it is just like going to take the bar, and it's scary. Let's just put it like that.
Very
And so I would
rigorous.
call her Dr. C. So we kind of like motivated each other. We're going to be doctors before we're actually doctors. And so it just kind of stuck, you know? And I feel like it's simple too, because Dr. Pearson sounds very formal, like it's very serious, you know? But when we say Dr. P here, we've been laughing and our hearts are warm. So I think it's one of those things that make me more approachable as well. So people can say, hey, I'll go talk to Dr. P about that. Well, come on in.
Yeah. It's sort of like I'm thinking Ted Lasso and the psychologist there. Like, I don't remember what her name was, character name or anything, but I love the persona. But it was sort of this, like, if she had that Dr. P, eventually she had a name and everybody else loved her, but she was cold to Ted. All right. So you have to watch the show to find out, but
Yeah.
entertaining nonetheless. And it is one of those, you have a sort of, I don't know, TV talk show host name, not like Dr. Oz. That's not where I'm going, but just sort of like you could have your own show. It's Dr. P's show. And anyway, so thanks for sharing that.
Yes.
One of the pieces I like to weave in, I don't try to get to it every time, but I love talking about best or worst meeting that you've had. Obviously, we've got a theme with the show. This meeting could have, should have, would have been a podcast. Do you have a story in mind that resonates with you about worst meeting ever? They're like, oh my God, I can't believe we're here. Why are we doing this? Why am I going through this? And I know it probably comes closer to home for some people than others, depending on who your bosses are.
Yeah, I have a lot of those stories. And if I told any specific story, someone listening to this would know the person or the organization. So what I'm going to do, since I've had so many of these situations, I'm just going to generalize it and you're going to
Yeah,
actually
fair.
understand. So one of the most worst type meetings that I've ever experienced is when leadership asks employees for their input, even though a decision has already been made. So everyone spends an hour, they're giving their ideas. They're like, yeah, I'm being heard, blah, 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 blah. And participating in what feels like a discussion, only to realize that the outcome has already been predetermined from the beginning. Those meetings are frustrating because they create that illusion of inclusion without any real influence. And it really irritates me when that happens, because 9 times out of 10, if you've been around for a while, as soon as it starts, you can see it and you're like, well, I know how this is going to play out. And you're looking at people in the room that are so excited that have no clue. And you're like, they don't know that they've already made this decision. And they're pretending like they really want your inputs to say that I did get your input, which they are not going to use anyway. And so, yeah, I have a problem with that.
Yeah, and I've seen it where you'd have people on the inside, maybe it's somebody on the marketing side, who is already working on the messaging for what's been decided upon, right?
Hmm.
And so, it's, again, to your point, why are you doing this? You're trying to show this, but you're actually showing that you want to lie to us or pull the wool over our eyes. And it's just making it worse versus if you had just made the decision and didn't include us.
You know what
What a
it's
waste.
like? You can relate to this. It's like when you apply for a job, and we'll say internally and say the employer already knows who they want for that position. They may even have written that position specifically with the person in mind, but they go through the legal process of interviewing all of these qualified people to note in the end that those qualified people never had a chance.
Yeah,
That's
I've seen it
why.
firsthand. I had it happen to me. The person who got the job didn't even interview. I'm like, I don't know. And other people that I knew were scratching their heads. Are like, I don't understand. Like, what I had prepared all this stuff. I mean, I was super prepared. But I was young and brash, immature. Maybe that came across. But to find out that the other person hadn't interviewed, I'm like, this is just nonsense. That's just, and other people do it. And we talked about it because we were young and immature, and that's what you did. But,
But it's still happening in 2026. So,
yep. Yep. Absurd meetings, people don't have them. If you're going to make a decision, make a decision, right? It doesn't need to be deciding by committee. If you want to debate to decide, have those conversations. I have a client who uses that phrasing, debate to decide, or debate to discuss, I should say, but you're going to decide based on that discussion. Fine. No problem with that. Or at least preclude the meeting saying, we want to hear what you have to say. We may still decide elsewhere. Oh, I can't make up words today. You make different decisions,
Yep.
but at least you'll hear them out. Yeah,
Exactly.
I can't speak
Exactly.
right. It makes me think of other scenarios. I had created this false or made up type of scenario, and I will fully admit I used AI to give me a voice to it because it was a realistic scenario that I'm going to play here from our SpeakPipe tool. Just mirrors some of these elements where we get a chance to hear what happens when people are having these absurd meetings with no point, right? And so I'll let you listen in here.
So, it's Tuesday morning, and I get an invite at 8:58 a.m. for a 9 a.m. quick touch base with my boss. No agenda, no context, just the title, touch base. I walk in, and there are 15 people there, all looking just as confused as I am. The boss starts by saying, I just wanted to see where everyone's head is at, and then proceeds to spend the next 45 minutes reminiscing about a project we finished 3 years ago. Every time someone tried to pivot to the actual deadlines we're facing this week, he'd say, we'll get to that, and then dive into a story about a vendor he used to know. By the time he looked at his watch and realized he had another call, we had discussed 0 tasks, made 0 decisions, and lost an hour of our most productive time. I walked out of a quick huddle, needing a nap and a time machine.
I love how it threw in the nap piece.
Oh my goodness. It's so true. You're exhausted after all of that. Yeah.
But it's so true. Like that type of scenario happens where it doesn't matter if it's the C-suite leader, but somebody's running a meeting. You've just taken 6, 8, 10 people's time, all making $50 an hour. You multiply that by the hour plus the half hour of what the hell just happened. on top of that. And how much money have you just wasted for nothing? And it happens week after week, month after month. And instead of being more thoughtful about, do I really need this meeting? Could it have been an email? Like, you give me fodder. I love talking about crap like that. But yeah,
It sounds like
yeah.
that person didn't have an agenda either. That if they
Oh,
did, they didn't follow it. So like,
that's the one thing I learned. I think in part, my friend Matt Scarkilly runs a Sandler program here in Albany. And so I've been to enough of things. I've been through Sandler sales training, but I can remember a session where that agenda setting component is just so valuable.
it is.
You don't have to get everything down, but let me at least have a couple of items that we're going to get into or make sure we're on the same page. Yeah, so those are some great examples, and I hope other people will call into that SpeakPipe tool. Put the link into the show notes as well. So that all said, I want to give a second for you to kind of tell folks for stuff that they're struggling with regarding to their AI tech stack and how they're setting the guardrails up, or if you're still doing some of that diversity touch points with folks that need it. Where can people find you? What's the best way to get in touch with you?
The best way to get in touch with me is on LinkedIn. I'm there most of the day these days. And I do look at messages and I do respond within a couple of hours. So yeah, LinkedIn would probably be the best place to do that.
Awesome. Okay. Well, for those listening and watching, we'll make sure to include contact information so you can get a hold of Dr. P for questions, discussions. Maybe somebody else hears this and they have their own show and they want to talk deeper about one of the things that we touched on today, which would
Yeah,
be even better for you.
I love it.
We'll make sure we include some notes about the book and when to expect that and where. And anything else that we can bring into this conversation, or did I miss anything, or recapture everything that we said we were going to hit, right?
Well, I do want to make a little point about exit interviews because
Oh, yeah.
that's one of those things that it keeps me up at night and it's just baffling. So most organizations do exit interviews. Most organizations do stay interviews. A lot of organizations don't know what stay interviews are, and a lot of organizations do not do exit interviews. But most organizations that do exit interviews treat it like an autopsy. I'm going to pause for a second because I want that to sit in.
It's true.
Most organizations treat exit interviews like an autopsy. And I think that's backwards. If you're learning about leadership problems after somebody has already resigned, you've waited a little too long. And exit interviews should validate what you've already been hearing from stay interviews, your everyday conversations, employee listening sessions. And if the exit interview surprises leadership, let me tell you that. That's often evidence that employees don't feel safe enough to tell them why they're still there. Thus, the
Right.
psychological safety and trust being so important.
That's really, really awesome that you bring that out. That trust factor in it being alarming, because I know I've seen exit interviews and they're like, oh, they were disgruntled, that's why they left, or they leave and they're like, oh, they were a bad employee anyway. I'm like, no, they weren't. They were a solid contributor 2 weeks ago before they gave their notice, and all of a sudden, because they decided to leave you, you feel offended or spurned, and now they are, I don't know, the plague. You don't want to touch them. You don't want to be associated with their messaging. Yeah, maybe they were sour, and maybe some of this is on them. But what part are we taking for ourselves as employers, as leaders, to realize we need to fix this or we need to change this because this is the perception? Because enough perceptions out there, reality is somewhere in between.
Mhm. True statement.
I used to advocate for exit and stay interviews, and the more places I thought of and the more discussions I had, in order for those to be truly valid, you have to have some semblance of trust. And if you're relying upon that and have high turnover, you're not getting it.
Yeah. Yeah. Because once people check out mentally, they're checked out and they're not. You didn't solve my problem, especially if I told you about it and you did nothing about it. So why do you think I'm going to sit down and tell you things that, of course it would help other people, but most people don't. When they're gone, they're gone. They don't.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. I agree with you. It's they've made the decision. It's one thing if you have some task things like the 2-week notice. I appreciate. Do I need a full 2 weeks? Probably not. It's me paying you for work, and I'm more worried about the damage that you might be causing, or you're distracting other people, or just take my stuff and go, right? Pay me the 2 weeks and I'll be out of your hair. I had one place that said, you can just stay for this and this and that. I'm like, okay, I did everything in 2 days and I'm just twiddling my thumbs for the other 8 days. I'm like, oh, all right, whatever. Well, Dr. P, that was a great segue to wrap up our session today. I like the exit interview piece and really recognizing that there's useful information that we can apply for employers.
I'm going to write about that next.
Yeah. So you got all sorts of writing ideas in here.
Yeah.
Well, for our listeners, thanks for listening. Thanks for being part of this meeting. Should have been a podcast. I want to thank Dr. P for joining us today. We're going to include a bunch of information on what's next in her life. And, oh, you know what? Speaking of next, we didn't talk about the last piece, which is what's the next cruise? Where are you off to?
Oh, okay. Well, I'm headed to Bermuda in September and then Alaska in May. So I'm excited. Bermuda's my most favorite place on Earth. So I normally go every year, and I missed last year. So getting there this year is going to be a treat. It's really going.
So that's going to be your lead-in questions when you get a hold of Angela, is ask her about her cruising history, because it is phenomenal. So So that all said, folks, thanks for listening. We wish you a great day and tell your friends about us. Have a great day.